I'm John McDougall, and I think you said a lot about me in the introduction. I don't know what I need to say more, except for the fact that I've been in medicine more than a half a century, and I've personally taken care of over 12,000 patients. We run a internet-based program now. Thanks to COVID-19, we're chased out of the resort business, but you can find us at drmcdougall.com and see what we're up to these days. And I think really important for you to know is I'm the father of 3 children and the grandfather of 7 children. And that's a lot of my motivation as to why I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I love being a doctor, by the way. In fact, I often describe myself as the luckiest doctor in the world. Why? Because my patients get well. Let's see. Let's just get into the slide presentation. Hopefully I'll stimulate some questions and maybe some enthusiasm. All right, here we go. Okay, so the title of this presentation is Diet is the common denominator for solving chronic disease, climate change, and COVID. We're always looking for high-tech solutions, or at least the general audience is looking for a high-tech solution. After all, we're a society that could wipe out the entire planet with atomic bombs. So we ought to be able to do anything, right? And that's the way I was raised, and I know a lot of people still think that way, but it's really low-tech solutions that are the real answer. For example, we have the COVID-19, pandemics after pandemic of COVID viruses. And, we rely on vaccinations and treatments, but, they've had serious limitations. You've been watching it and you've been hearing about it on the news. And still the basic things as far as preventing infectious diseases still hold. Like wearing a mask, washing your hands, social distances. Those are the low-tech solutions. I've spent 46 years taking care of patients with a dietary approach. I've been in medicine more than 55 years, but I spent 46 years dedicated to solving people's problems with a good diet, a little moderate exercise and some sunshine. But I was taught to use high-tech solutions, lots of drugs, lots of surgeries, medical interventions. And I want to tell you, for chronic disease, these high-tech solutions are a failure. And these days, and what I'm going to dedicate a considerable amount of this presentation to, and hopefully I'll get your attention, is I want to talk to you about how we can deal with the real threat of climate change by low-tech efforts. We're not going to solve the problems with carbon capture. That's just silly stuff. It's about as silly as thinking we're going to be saved by galactic aliens coming down from outer space and fixing our atmosphere and our planet. It's not going to happen, folks. We've got to deal with this ourselves. All of these are connected. They're all connected to diet, chronic disease, climate change, infectious disease. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, is how diet plays a dominant role in all these problems. But you got to realize when we're talking about all of these problems, there are financial issues and issues of personal appearance, and religious faith is involved in each of these issues. We're talking about loss of habitat and animal suffering and people suffering, and it's just a mess. So let's talk about chronic disease. That's where I've spent my whole career, more than a half a century, and 46 years treating people who have chronic disease with a good diet. I have whittled my program down as far as the teaching aspect to as simple as possible, to get people to make effective changes. And what I've done is I've put the problems in terms of food poisoning. Just like if you were going to come to me and you were drinking a bottle of gin a day, I tell you, look, you got alcohol poisoning, you got to quit it. And you know what to do, wouldn't you? Or if you came to see me with smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, what do I tell you? I tell you have tobacco poisoning. And you know what to do. I mean, it's a simple solution, isn't it? Well, I've tried to make it as simple when it comes to food poisoning so that you can act. And it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. The things that cause food poisoning I put into two categories. One, any animal foods. That means secretions like milk and cheese and yogurt, and body parts of animals. That's one category of poison that you avoid. And the other are free oils. That means safflower oil, canola oil, olive oil, flaxseed oil, you name it, whatever health food oil you're selling, whatever day. Toxic. The diseases that result from food poisoning, you're familiar with them. Obesity and its various complications like high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease. That's food poisoning. Diabetes, both type 1 and type 2. But if I talk about diabetes today, or I'm going to give another presentation at the end of the week, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes unless I specify that it's type 1. And of course, both kinds of diabetes are associated with all kinds of complications like kidney failure, eye damage, and early death. It's a tough disease. Heart disease, we're talking about the involvement of 60,000 miles of blood vessels that stream throughout your body, all the way from hearing loss to heart attacks to strokes to impotence. Various kinds of arthritis are due to food poisoning. Cancers of the colon, breast, prostate, uterus, and probably most every cancer is influenced, at least somewhat, by what you eat and the health that you appreciate based upon your eating habits. This should be an easy one. What you put in your stomach causes it to be healthy or sick. Doesn't that make sense? Well, for a lot of people, they don't think about it. They just take Nexium or Prilosec or some kind of pill, and they think their problem is cured or solved. No, it's not. You're still putting food poisons in your stomach, and you're suffering from the various diseases, including GERD and indigestion, ulcers, etc. This one is particularly obvious to all of us who lived on the American diet. Bowel diseases. And the one that is so common people suffer from is serious and chronic constipation, which, by the way, I give a lecture on this. It's about how chronic constipation is the cause of a lot of other troubles people have, like hemorrhoids and varicose veins and hiatus hernias and prolapse of the uterus. And, a lot of injury to the body occurs as a consequence of something that you may consider a simple, although it's a very common problem. So how do you solve food poisoning? Well, for a lot of people, not this audience necessarily, for a lot of people, when I say you can't eat anything from animals and you can't eat any free oils, they look at me and they go, but there's nothing left to eat. You just took away everything. Well, probably everything that you've learned to eat, and you've learned to fear starch. But what I'm here to tell you is that you need to start thinking in terms of the fact that you are a starch eater, a starchitarian, a starchivore. The human body is designed to live on starches, and I'm going to show you why. And when I ask people to plan their meal, I ask them to not weigh, not look up in a handbook, not hire a dietitian. Just look at your plate. About 90% of the food on your plate should be starch. And the other 10%, non-starchy, green and yellow vegetables and fruits. We have in various places, McDougall Mobile Cookbook has 1,000 recipes. Our website probably has another 1,000 that are free. And we have 11 of our 13 national best-selling books have recipes in them. I would add it up to about 4,000 recipes available for next to nothing. We've been at this for a long time, folks. Let me show you some of the results of the kind of practice that I've had. This is scientific studies on the McDougall program, the McDougall diet. This is published. You can look up the research. So far, it's uncontested, even though it's been out for about 8 years. We studied 1,703 of our people. We didn't exclude anybody in this study. It was over a 10-year period of time. People who came to our resort-based program, our residential program. And what we found was the average weight loss, eating as much as they wanted, and they loved the food, was 3.1 pounds in 7 days. Cholesterol drops on average 22 milligrams per deciliter. You'd be hard pressed to get that from statin drugs. The average decrease in blood pressure in people who started with high blood pressure was 18 over 11 millimeters of mercury. And they started with high blood pressure, and most of them were on pills. And the next thing I feel really good about is that we got nearly 90% of people off their medications, particularly high blood pressure diabetic medications. Ladies and gentlemen, sick people take drugs. Healthy people don't. A study done independent of us, totally independent of us, except for we were involved in the education. It was done at Oregon Health and Science University, which is the medical school in Portland. A 1-year study. The average weight loss was 19.1 pounds. And these are people who didn't come to the study interested in weight loss. Their primary objective was help with multiple sclerosis. Nearly a 20-pound weight loss, eating as much as they wanted for a year. That was average. Average cholesterol drop was 19 milligrams per deciliter. Pretty similar to what we got in the 7 days. We reduced their insulin levels, fatigue. And the interesting thing is we had a chance to study the compliance of these people. We had a chance to educate them at our live-in program. It was a 10-day residential program when we ran it before COVID-19. And they had a whole year afterwards, not under our care, under the care of the neurologists, the doctors at Oregon Health and Science University. And yet, when we took a look at the data at 1 year, we found something that was really remarkable. And that is that 85% of people were compliant for a year. You can't keep people to be that compliant with drugs for a year. Now, why were they compliant for a year? Well, I like to think our education is top notch. But again, we only had them for a little more than a week for an entire year. The reason that they were so compliant is they got such dramatic benefits. And they liked the food. Totally independent of us. In fact, in another part of the world, the broad study was in New Zealand. It was a community-based study, and I didn't find out about the study until after it was done and published. But it used the McDougall diet, and so I'm going to tell you about it. They brag about having the best weight loss of any program out there, that people on average lost 25 pounds in 1 year. And they could eat as much as they want. Again, they got such dramatic results, and they liked the food, so they stuck with it. Cholesterol drops were about the same, about 20 milligrams per deciliter. They got off their medications just like in our 10-day program. And, they attended the meetings. 80% of the participants attended the meetings for an entire year. Again, it's really hard to get that kind of participation, but when you got a good program, you do. The way the program works is quite simple. Is we take advantage of the natural healing capacity of the body. What we do is we remove the injury, the damage. Like, for example, if you smoke cigarettes or you know somebody who smokes cigarettes, what do you have to do to cause them to heal themselves? They're always healing. I want you to think about this. The body's always trying to heal. I mean, this man is coughing and bringing up sputum because he's trying to defend himself from the poisonous tobacco. The body never lets you down. It always is trying to heal. So you quit smoking in this case, and what happens? About a week later, you stop coughing, and they tell us that in 7 years, you reduce your risk of lung cancer to the general population. So again, I want to emphasize that what we're doing is just taking advantage of something that's intrinsic. It's inside you. It's always going on. Even if you have cancer, doesn't matter. Heart disease, it doesn't matter. Your body's always trying to survive. It's one of those basic things of nature is survival. Now, in our program, what we do is we take advantage of the food, and we remove the foods that are causing people to be sick. I showed you what they were. They were any animal products and free oils. And the natural healing capacity of the body, it expressed itself. It just came out. It was there, but you couldn't see it because the damage outstripped the healing capacity of the body. That's all. That's the miracle that's inside the patient. Each and every patient has this. So once you stop the injury, then the healing processes, they can catch up and surpass. And what you notice is you regain your health. It's really that simple.